Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you again, Chairman Hochberg, for being here and for your service. Your work has been extraordinary. I know you took over in very hard times, and you've been able to accomplish a lot for our businesses, and I'm sure those who work for those businesses are very grateful for your work. I particularly appreciate your focus on small businesses and on streamlining your procedures to make them more accessible. I want to ask you, though, about something else, and that is in 2011, as you know, Congress negotiated a Korea Free Trade Agreement. And at the time that it was negotiated, the U.S. Trade Representative cheered the agreement for the opportunities it would provide for creating more trade with Korea. I'm sure you've noticed, though, that the facts have not worked out so clearly. Since the agreement went into effect in March 2012, trends in trading patterns with Korea have been alarming. And I checked the numbers between February 12 and March 2013, which is the most recently available data. U.S. imports globally grew by 5%, but they increased from Korea by 17%. Our exports to the world increased by 11%, very good news, but they decreased to Korea by 5%. So looking at this another way, while our nation's global trade deficit shrunk 5%, our deficit with Korea increased by a staggering 170%. To put a specific number on it, our trade deficit with Korea was about $1.5 billion during this time period. So the question I want to ask is, your job is to increase exports and to reduce our trade deficit. Do you think that the Korea Trade Agreement has made it harder for you to do that, Mr. Chairman?
I don't see an impact in that regard. Our trade that we are engaged with at Exim Bank with Korea has primarily been in two areas. It's been in aircraft. Korean Airlines, I'm happy to say, is a very strong Boeing customer. And we have worked with them on some joint financing. Also in some of the areas of renewable energy, solar panels and solar energy. But we do not have a strong book of business with Korea outside of that. I've actually planned a trip to Korea later this year because there are a number of Korean infrastructure firms, and I want to make sure that they start buying from the United States when they're doing infrastructure in third countries. So that's one of our goals, to increase that footprint for American companies, because these Korean EPC firms, as they refer, engineering, production, procurement, and construction, are very formidable, and I want to make sure that American companies get their fair share of that.
Well, I appreciate that you're trying to do that, because obviously, just based on the math, something is not working very well for the United States on the Korea Free Trade Agreement, and it seems to be working at cross purposes with what it is that you're trying to accomplish. As you know, the U.S. Trade Ambassador is currently negotiating the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, and has your office played a role in those negotiations?
We do not. The role of the U.S. Trade Representative is really to formulate the trade agreements. Once they're in place, our role is to companies that need our support in those markets is to work with them in those markets.
Do you think it would be helpful? I'm a little concerned because of the data out of Korea. If we asked the trade representative to involve you more in the negotiations, or do you think that's not an appropriate role?
It's, we're really about implementation at the Exim Bank. So in terms of trade policy, that really is somewhat outside of our lane. With the jobs we're trying to sustain and support at Exim Bank, I've got my hands pretty full in supporting U.S. exporters in the work we're doing right now.
Fair enough. Thank you. I just have one more, and I want to just try to ask it quickly. There have been some troubling indications that the big banks see the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement and the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership as opportunities to weaken financial regulations, a chance for these banks to get something done quietly out of sight that they could not accomplish in a public place with the cameras rolling and the lights on. And this is a really serious concern for me. So I have a question about future negotiations. If you are involved in any way in future negotiations, whether it's formally or informally, as you monitor these negotiations, will you take a close look at the terms and do what you can to make sure that these agreements do not become a backdoor way to water down financial regulations for the large banks?
Well, I can say the following also. We have probably some of the strongest banks in the entire world right now because of the kind of reserves that have been put in and the fact that they have beefed up their balance sheets. And so that is what we need to work with, because most of the loans we make are guaranteed. We work with a bank and we guarantee those loans. So for a number of years, we made a large number of loans with European banks. They have largely exited the market because of their weakened conditions. So a stronger banking system is far better for Ex-Im Bank because we can work with a lot stronger banks that way.
Thank you, and I apologize for running over, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.